So, this is one of the more unusual pieces in my collection. It's a game called Japan Mayhem, and it is, as you can see, a black and white game printed on uncut copy paper and stuffed into a manila envelope. It's something I picked up at a convention ages ago. The goal of the game is it's based on sort of the late the 80s and 90s anime scene where there's collateral damage all over the place, and your goal is to be the anime character who causes the most collateral damage. Yes, Akira is a playable character, and yes, he is obscenely overpowered, which is why I won the demo game I got and thus won this game. Although, the funny thing about this is it's kind of proof that you don't really have to put in oodles and tons of effort to get a game out there, as long as your goal is not to make money at it. If your goal is to I don't know, show it off to some friends, maybe sell a copy or two to some game enthusiasts, you can produce a game technically anytime you want. It's something I pointed out in the video, is the push for high quality art and layout and design is mostly if you want to actually go commercial. If you want your game to be put on shelves, if you want to, sell it at, things other than tiny little swap meets and stuff, then you need to put a lot more effort into it. But to actually produce a game that exists in a playable state is ludicrously easy. Like I said, this was made with copy paper. It's clearly made by photocopies. If I look at the character artwork, you can see black lines where that's kind of a shadow left over from the photocopying process. This is just something somebody went to Staples and ran off one day. I actually have another game by Troll Trader, ironically enough, the people behind Dropship and Drop Zone Commander, and they have a game called Space Swarm, which is a similar sort of Space Armada battle game that's printed on laser cut wood. I know this says Warhammer, I'm just using the bag for it. But it's little ships printed on laser cut wood. It's a pair of entire fleets for 10 British pounds, or, a little over $12, $13. But it's an entire game with full fleets of stuff. You don't have to necessarily go crazy on the number of things you include in each box or how high fidelity the plastic or the design is, if all you want to do is crank a game out there. So I hope that's something that came across well in the video. Another thing that I hope came across well in the video is that I do not blame the artists for why the Munchkin collectible card game, which I call the trading card game throughout the entire video, thank you very much, why the artwork for the collectible card game, I don't fault the artists for it. I faulted poor direction. That is something that I hope I established pretty well, is when I make reference to bad art, I specifically used art that I created. I'm not here to pick on people or, come across as a bully. Like I said, the reason I cited the Munchkin collectible card game is it's one of the few cards that actually has 2 credits on there. It has separate credits for the illustrator and the colorist. And like I said, there's frequently some kind of miscommunication in how that should come across, where it's really simple design, but the colorist is asked to really make it big and bold and fancy, which is why we have things like the weird egg-shaded noses and eyeballs and all that. I have here a couple of successes. If all of the cards in the game looked like Vampire Cat or Crushionate, they would probably be a whole lot better, particularly Vampire Cat. Vampire Cat has a very striking visual style that I think would have worked for the entire game if they had stuck with it, but instead their vision went fuzzy on how they wanted the artwork to look, and as a result, the whole thing feels like a mess. Sorry that video took so long to come out. Sorry this video took so long to come out. So yeah, this was the reason that this video actually got delayed by a year, because I was waiting for the cards that featured my artwork to come out, and of course, Metazu and I have since had a falling out since then, but water under the bridge, NFTs under the blockchain, whatever term you want to use for it. So yeah, here we are, the art and layout section. I'm sorry I didn't get this one out sooner, because I have seen a lot of games that seem to flub how they position things on the card. A lot of games just kind of imitate how other games do it. A lot of games put the combat stats in the bottom right, but as I emphasized in the episode, that's actually not a bad place to put it, because you want the things that people see when they're holding the cards in their hand to be the things that get the card out of their hand and onto the field. So like I emphasized there. Although some people did ask me to demonstrate some examples of a card game whose visual design also fell apart. One of them is actually a newer game called Cryptic, which is, to my understanding, I've been checking the rules. It kind of looks like it's a lot of sort of like a sort of a Duel Masters clone where it has like a mana system and it has a shield system, in this case called 11-year cards, which is a bit verbose, I confess. Although it does have a mechanic called short on time, which means if you are currently losing the game, if you have fewer life points, if you have fewer 11-year cards remaining, a lot of cards get bonus effects, and I'm sure a lot of the Yu-Gi-Oh players right now are going, you mean my cards are more powerful the less life points I have? And I can just imagine how that's going. However, Cryptic, the test cards I was sold, kind of commits... Well, it commits something I brought up before, which is it put out a set of cards that are printed entirely in a cipher, which I've said not to do because while it's kind of amusing for 2 seconds, you then realize that those cards are, like, unplayable. But the other one, the big one, is that they failed to separate the black layer from the rest of the color layer, and so a lot of the black is instead in the rosettes. So it's integrated into the rosettes. Now this is the best loop I could find in time for the episode to come out. They said it was ×6 magnification. It's actually more like ×2. I'm gonna maneuver it around to see if I can make it work a bit better for you. But you can kind of see on these collector numbers, especially this gray spots here, how it looks kind of indecipherable because it's not mixed in. It's mixed in with the color rosettes. This is why you want to make sure that your black layer is a separate layer, because it can be rendered far more sharply on the card because it's not trying to blend color to form black or white. Some of the later cards, some of the other cards I got in here, they look a bit better because they use white for a lot of their text. But the reason white shows up nice and sharp in these stories is because black and white are the colors that show up the most cleanly and clearly on these cards for pretty obvious reasons. What happens is first you have white paper, right? You have just paper that's just coated in white. If you want to add a foil layer, they add like the foil layer on top of the white and then actually do a layer of white out over that to create a space to print on. It's an opaque white because ink is transparent. But what happens is things that are white in the card's design remain white. They don't receive any ink, and so they remain flat and fairly sharp. And black is the other sharp color because it's not attempting to blend colors the way the CMY part of the CMYK printing wants to. So because it's a single color, it can have much higher fidelity printing to it, which is why black is usually done as a separate layer. In fact, it's a common way to distinguish counterfeit cards is when the black layer is blended into the rosettes. It's frequently a fake card. You'll see this in like all of the Magic the Gathering, like how to identify a fake card tutorials. Another good thing about having the black layer be its own layer is, especially if your game uses like line art or like has like the black border, it will be it helps make your art look a lot more crisp and clean because the black lines will be rendered in the hard black color, which will help get rid of any of the obfuscation that might happen as a result of a loss of rosettes. It's a good thing to keep in mind. As for another failure, this is sadly a much requested game that has some pretty big mess-ups in its design, and that is actually the Hot Wheels Acceleracers card game. So, yeah, the little video I used that had, like, a robot playing against, like, this, like, little nerd, like, playing a card game, that's actually the tutorial video for the Hot Wheels Acceleracers card game, which came out ages and ages and ages ago, and I've seen a lot of, like, really cringy, like, how-to videos that try to do things, like, in-universe and stuff like that. Like, the one for Arcane Legions is, like, the actual worst. But the one for Acceleracers, I actually think is charming. The way it's presented, where the two characters are hanging out in what looks like a break room to play the game. It looks like a couple of stars from the show doing like a promo as like part of their contract or something. So it comes across as like, you know, they're just kind of improvising a little matchup and, you know, doing some fun stuff in character to sell the card game, kind of like you see in like wrestling commercials or things like that. I actually find it pretty charming. But the big problem with it is how it portrays its numbers. Now, don't get me wrong, the way it portrays its numbers the way it is relative to other cards is actually brilliant, because these numbers are designed to line up with the numbers present on other cards. For instance, you have the road cards, which present the difficulty that one of these stats has to meet. And then there's like the mod cards and the shift cards, which also line up clean with the numbers. However, the thing is, each of these numbers has a name, and the name does come up in card text. So tell me, which of these numbers is which? What do these numbers mean? Which one of them is speed? Which one of them is power? Which one of them is control? Actually, I made that up. There isn't a control stat, it's performance. So the fact that you don't really get anything to distinguish these numbers apart can make it really confusing for people who are playing. And, you know, you have a card that says, oh, you need to pull a performance card out of your discard pile. How do you know which stat is performance? And this isn't something that would necessarily be fixed by just having like a little letter underneath the number either, because there are two P's. There's power and performance along with speed. So you'd preferably have some kind of icon, like an icon that appears like faintly underneath the number or something like that to say, oh, this is power, this is performance, this is speed, and then each of those can be used as icons. Like it says, you need, like, if performance was like a tire, it would say, like, you need to find a tire logo performance card from your discard pile. So that would carry forward. I didn't mention it in the video because I couldn't really find a lot of good examples. But there are instances where you can use both, where you can have the symbol followed by the name when you're talking like attribute logos like this. The symbol followed by the name can help keep things organized, because it's like, okay, that's what that symbol means, that's the name. If I see this name on other cards, I now know what it means and how to correlate it. And like I said, it's about lowering that barrier to entry. So here are a couple of examples of how to flub things. Although, like I said, one thing it does well, and something that I meant to put in the video but somehow forgot to do despite having a year to edit the thing, was having cards that line up. Like if a card is an upgrade or like a power-up, have it so that you can just slip the card underneath so that it lines up nice and cleanly with the other card and you see the stat bonuses right away. That's pretty nice. It's the same with things like energy cards. Pokemon's energy cards have like a bar at the top that says energy and the symbol it represents. That's so you can, you know, flush them all into like just a little stack, rather than having to have all the cards out. You can flush them in a little stack and tuck them into your Pokemon, and that makes it super easy. How cards interact is pretty important, and, you know, making it so that you can use space on the table efficiently is an important thing. Although that brings me to the next thing I want to talk about. Some people have asked me about the game Sorcery and Sorcery Contested Realm. I took a look at this game, and I admit it's not my cup of baloney, if that's even a saying. But Sorcery, it's another game that uses cards as pawns, and I've already emphasized how that might be a problem in my video about the sin that is requiring more than the deck and some dice. Card games that use the cards as pawns, it seems like, you know, a really cheap, easy thing to do. They serve like double duty and stuff like that. But the problem is moving cards around on a mat is kind of a pain in the butt. Especially if they have like stats, or if they gain like tokens on them, they become really hard to move around because you have to pick it up and you're like a tray supporting a bunch of tokens on there. And if your hand slips a tiny bit, oh no, the tokens are everywhere. I've ruined the game state forever. I honestly think that I've actually seen a number of games that are like Sorcery. I've seen some that are worse. Some that actually not only use cards as pawns, but also use cards as the battlefield. And boy howdy, does that become a nightmare fast. The reason I think we're seeing a lot of these that haven't really been understanding just how crazy things can get when you have to have like a big board set up to play the card game is, I think it actually has to do with Tabletop Simulator. Tabletop Simulator is, as its name implies, it is a program that allows you to create a playable version of a game without having to generate the physical assets to do so. However, I think it's causing some design mistakes in a number of games, because a lot of people start to take for granted things such as, you know, size of the table or how different objects interact with each other, when your table size is infinite and everything is effectively glued in place until you touch it. So, like a game, something in Tabletop Simulator, if you make a board out of cards and then try to have other cards move around on those cards, that doesn't seem like a problem in Tabletop Simulator because all those cards on the table are glued down, and the tokens that are attached to the card giving it stats are glued to that card, essentially. So the process of moving that all around does not seem like a problem. I beg of you, if you're making a game with Tabletop Simulator, I beg of you to, go to your printer, run off a copy on just basic copy paper and see how it feels to play in an actual physical form. Especially if you can get somebody who hasn't tested the game to play it with you to see if maybe your game is physically too cumbersome to reliably operate. That is... That is something I would like to stress, would like to bring up. That said, I am taking a look at some other card games. There's one called D-Spirits that seems kind of interesting that I'm going to take a look at. Like I said, I'm open to looking at people's card games. I don't want, like I said, I'm not a big fan of like publicly looking at card games by like small designers without their approval or, without letting them in on it. Because I don't want to feel like a bully, but I'll gladly look at other card games. That said, subjects for future videos, I'm still working on that. I know the thing that people probably want to know about the most is like actually getting your game to production and getting it to store shelves. I'm trying to do that, but this is the part where the industry seems to have gotten really cagey, and it has been really hard to get anybody to talk to me. Like, I've been emailing like publishers and, distributors and stuff like that to try to learn how they do stuff, but I haven't really gotten confirmation back. I have said that I would take anonymous information for people who work in the industry, but the people who have contacted me, I then ask them for their credentials, and they ghost me. Even from anonymous information, especially for anonymous information, you do still need to ask for credentials. That's just basic journalistic integrity. So if that's what scared you away, I'm just doing it how all the newspapers do it. So I'm sorry about that. Although, something I would like to talk about that I think I could make a short video on is, something I say in a lot of my videos is it's always the little things, where I refer to like just small niceties that a game does to just make it just a slightly more pleasant experience, like the Mega Man game I actually have here because it does a pretty neat little thing with its playmat. Should I spoil it? I'll go ahead and spoil it. What it does is, the little thing that it does is it actually has a playmat with a character already printed on it. So this is actually different from the character here. This is actually this is the mat from the Sharkman deck, but where it has an avatar card, it actually has an avatar character with all of their stats and abilities already printed on the playmat. So if you don't like how this guy played out, maybe you'll see if you like this guy better. Although Mega Man is like the really generic character with the same kind of stats, and ironically enough, Sharkman has the same stats, although the mats I got from the Pharaohman and Pronoman deck were actually Gutsman and Roll, who play very differently from those other kinds. So it's not a bad little gimmick to have, like, if you have an avatar card, to have like an avatar card already printed on the mat, like a fairly generic one, so that people can experiment with multiple avatars. That's, it's one of those little things that makes a game a bit more fun. Or if you lose your avatar card, you have an avatar card you can use with the playmat. That's one of those it's one of those little things I like to talk about. But yeah, that is how things have been going over here, and hopefully I'll be able to come up with some more stuff. I finally got myself a copy of Doomtown, and maybe I'll do a quick look at its how to play guide, because it has like one of the worst how to play guides I have ever seen. It goes turn by turn, but it doesn't actually explain like the rules. It doesn't like cue in with the rules as they go. Unlike the Acceleracers how to play video. The Acceleracers how to play video is actually pretty good in my opinion. It kind of it shows a game in progress. It has a character who got reckless and spent all their cards, and so the card they draw that turn is the one they're going to play, so it tells you if it's like a vehicle or a shift or something like that. It's a good example of how to do it, so I'd recommend it. But yeah, until next time, we're going to take a look at some more games for now, I guess. But until then, this is Kodak signing off.